Hello, this is Thomas Ellenberg coming to you from beautiful San Francisco, California. And I'm going to be talking today about the book The Vortex, written by two very wonderful people that I have met personally and even worked with personally, Jerry and Esther Hicks of the Abraham-Hicks movement. This book is absolutely groundbreaking. I actually believe that many of the predictions about 2012 and the wave of new consciousness coming into this planet from the center of the galaxy is actually being represented by this teaching. I believe this knowledge is like a wave, a tidal wave of new understanding, and it is absolutely brimming over with insight, with light, and with actually with power. And I'm going to read to you a short excerpt from page 27, and then I'm going to talk about how this has actually been an aspect of interest my whole life, this idea of the vortex self, the non-physical self, going ahead of us and actually creating and then living in the imaginary big dream of the big us, the big dream, way before we do in the physical time-space reality that we call now, the present. So anyway, on page 27, and I quote Abraham, as you see, I'm studying it. I'm going to memorize this book, I think, word for word, because the more I bask in the knowledge and wisdom that has come through Esther Hicks from this group consciousness known as Abraham. I believe it's actually the galactic universal consciousness. They call themselves the teachers of source energy. The more I bask in this knowledge and allow it to permeate my atoms and molecules and DNA, my life just absolutely takes off and soars. Anyway, Abraham says, the art of allowing is what you most want to understand. I'm going to hold this here so you see the book. Because in deliberately applying it to your life, you allow yourself to be all that you have already become. And anything less than the allowing of you to be the big you, the large you, the grand you, feels less good. In other words, every contrasting experience, which would be limitation, causes an expansion of who you are, because the larger non-physical part, that's the spirit part, the God part, the God man, the God woman within us, because the larger non-physical spirit self, the great I am, always moves to that point of farthest expansion. Now that is amazing. That's very, very, very powerful statement, that our spirit self, our larger self, becomes the future self as soon as we imagine it. And then Abraham gives a warning and says, but if you continue to look back to the events or circumstances or reasons that caused the expansion or the rockets of desire, you then hold yourself in opposition to the very expansion you seek, and you disallow it, and then you feel bad. The art of allowing is simply you're allowing yourself, by virtue of your deliberately chosen thoughts, to keep up with yourself, the larger self, the expanded self, the God self. And since the expansion is happening, because the contrast of your time-space reality insists that it keeps happening, because the universe is expanding and we're the universe expanding, if you are to be happy, you have no other choice but to keep up with this expansion. The broader non-physical part of you, to whom you have an eternal relationship, is one who loves. So the vibration is love. Love of self, love of the world, love of our brothers and sisters, love of our bodies, love of our lives, love of this process, love of the adventure, love of each other. So he says, they say, the broader non-physical part of us is the part of us that loves in every relationship. And when you are not loving, you are not practicing the art of allowing. The broader non-physical part of you is one who knows your worthiness. And when you are choosing thoughts that feel unworthy, you are not practicing the art of allowing. Here is an opportunity to begin to understand another basic flawed premise of your society. And then they list false premise number 4 right there. False premise number 4. These are brilliant because they're bringing out of the subconscious race mind collective consciousness that Jung talked about, the shadow part of our race, the thought that we share as humans. They're bringing out these flawed premises that are actually holding us back. And they're teaching in this book that in order to transcend the false premises, we have to first see them and then bring them up into the light. So they say the flawed premise number 4 is, I have come here to live the right way of life and to influence others to the same right way of living. And what feels right to me must be the right way of living for all. And then they add, you didn't come into this physical experience intending to take all of the ideas that exist and whittle them down to a handful of good ideas and then make everyone agree on it. Well, let me say, as a lifetime teacher, I taught every grade from kindergarten through 8th grade. I always kind of saw myself as needing to convince everybody in my life to agree with me and to agree with my belief system. In fact, in a way, I think I'm probably doing it right now. But what Abraham is saying is that we are here, for the number one reason of learning how to merge our physical selves, which would be the flesh and bone and body and blood self, this bodily self, with the non-physical self, which is like a vortex or energy. Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan used to say that we were made of this like cocoon of light, like this oval of bright light. And so Abraham is saying that before you try to improve any relationships in your life, the one relationship that must be healed and improved and aligned is the relationship between the physical self, the human self, the self with a name and an address and a career and friends and family and problems. Unless we merge that self with our vortex spiritual self, none of the other things are going to work out very well. In fact, it brings to mind what Jesus said, which is, seek ye first the kingdom, and I would add the kingdom of the vortex. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these other things will be added. So I have noticed in my life that just as Abraham promises, when I have followed what I have named a future self, when I have become aware that there is a future self swirling around in my energy system that wants me to manifest it or become it, when I follow that, everything seems to work out. In fact, I was living in Hawaii for a couple years, and all of a sudden I was told through numerous sources, because Source uses many voices to speak through, that it was time to come back to the San Francisco Bay Area, and I followed that, and I'm just amazed at the extraordinary unfoldment since coming back here. In fact, the last thing I want to say on this video is that I originally discovered San Francisco when I was in the Peace Corps in Venezuela, and I was like going to be drafted into Vietnam, and I needed a place to go and be free. And a future self came to me in the Peace Corps and said, come to San Francisco. It's a place where you can be free and think free. And as soon as I started to follow that, I was able to join the teacher corps. I received a 2-year free education, an automatic job, and a draft deferment. So I'm running out of time. The Vortex work is absolutely cutting edge. I love Jerry and Esther. Thank you all very much. Talk to you later. Bye.